The world holds its breath in 1940. France has fallen, and the shadow of the Third Reich stretches across mainland Europe. From the white cliffs of Dover, Britain stands alone, gazing across the narrowest of sea channels at an enemy poised to invade. Hitler's plan, codenamed Operation Sea Lion, is on the verge of execution. Thousands of barges are assembled in French ports, ready to carry 250,000 soldiers across the water in the first invasion of Britain since 1066. The German war machine appears unstoppable. They have the numbers, the momentum, and the will. But they don't have one thing: a clear view of what's coming. Britain, on the other hand, had a secret weapon, an invisible shield that would change the course of history. It wasn't a super bomb or a new kind of battleship. It was a strange and revolutionary technology, housed in giant steel towers that dotted the British coastline like skeletal sentinels. This is the story of how a network of radio waves, clever operators, and a revolutionary command system, known as Chain Home, broke the back of the Luftwaffe and indefinitely postponed Operation Sea Lion. This is how radar saved Britain. To understand the genius of Chain Home, we need to understand the problem it solved. Before 1940, defending an island nation from air attack was a logistical nightmare. The first line of defense was the Observer Corps, brave volunteers staring into the sky with binoculars and using sound mirrors huge concrete dishes too. Try and hear the drone of incoming engines. By the time they spotted a raid, it was often too late. Fighter squadrons would have to fly standing patrols, burning precious fuel and exhausting pilots, hoping to be in the right place at the right time. It was inefficient and reactive. The attacker always had the advantage of surprise. Germany's Luftwaffe, the most powerful air force in the world, was counting on this. Their strategy was simple: overwhelm the Royal Air Force with sheer numbers, destroy its airfields, break its morale, and establish complete air superiority. Without control of the skies, any sea invasion would be a suicide mission for the German army. The RF, heavily outnumbered, couldn't afford a war of attrition. They needed an edge. They needed to see in the dark. That edge was Chain Home, stretching from the Orkney Islands in the north all the way down the east and south coasts. This wasn't just a single invention, but an integrated system. The most visible parts were the massive transmitter towers, some standing 360 feet tall, which broadcast a powerful pulse of radio energy out over the sea. A short distance away, a set of smaller wooden receiver towers would listen for the echo. When the radio pulse hit an aircraft, it bounced back. By measuring the time it took for the echo to return, operators could calculate the distance to the target. By comparing the signals received on different antennas, they could determine its bearing and even estimate the number of aircraft in the formation. It was a revolutionary concept, but raw data alone doesn't win a battle. The true magic of the British system wasn't just detecting the enemy. It was what they did with that information. This was the Dowding system, named after the head of RAF Fighter Command, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding. It was the world's first large-scale, integrated air defense network. Imagine you're a RAF operator in a small wooden hut at the base of one of these radar towers. It's a stressful, high-pressure job. On your cathode ray tube screen, a glowing green line flickers. Suddenly, a small blip appears. Your training kicks in. You skillfully manipulate the controls, interpreting the shape and movement of this blip to estimate the range, bearing, and size of the enemy formation. The information is priceless, but it needs to get to the fighters fast. You pick up the phone and report your findings directly to a central hub, the filter room at Fighter Command headquarters. This is where the real genius of the system shines. The filter room was the nerve center of the entire operation. In a large room dominated by a massive map table of Great Britain and the English Channel, dozens of plotters received a constant stream of information not just from your radar station, but from every station along the coast. Information from one station could be unreliable. A blip could be a flock of geese, atmospheric interference, or a real raid. But the filter room cross-referenced reports from multiple stations. When several stations reported the same contact from different angles, they could triangulate its position with astonishing accuracy. Experienced filters would quickly assess the flood of raw data, filtering out the noise and identifying the genuine threats. They would place counters on the main map table, indicating the raid's location, heading, altitude, and estimated strength. This created a single, unified, real-time picture of the entire airspace around Britain. For the first time in history, a military commander could see the enemy's moves as they were happening, hundreds of miles away. The element of surprise, the Luftwaffe's greatest weapon, was gone. From the central filter room, the now verified information was passed down the chain of command. It went to group headquarters, responsible for large sectors of the country, and then to the sector airfields within that group. In the sector operations room, another team stood around a similar, more detailed local map. The sector controller, seeing the enemy plot moving towards his area, had a crucial decision to make. Which squadron to scramble? He knew the readiness state of every squadron under his command, the number of available aircraft, and the skill of the pilots. Based on the raid's altitude and direction, he would choose the best squadron for the intercept. The order was given. Scramble. Within minutes, Hurricane and Spitfire pilots were sprinting to their aircraft. But they weren't flying blind. Guided by their own radio controllers who were watching the same plot, they were directed precisely to the incoming raid. This meant no more wasteful standing patrols. No more searching the vast, empty sky. The RF could hold the bulk of its forces in reserve on the ground, ready and fueled. They could meet the enemy with maximum force, exactly where and when they were needed. Even better, they could choose the terms of engagement. Controllers could vector the fighters to gain a height and positional advantage, allowing them to dive on the German bombers from out of the sun. The Germans were baffled. They would fly towards what they thought was an undefended coastline, only to be met time and time again by determined formations of RAF fighters, appearing as if from nowhere. The Luftwaffe pilots started to feel like they were flying into a perfectly laid trap every single time. The Germans, of course, were aware of the strange towers. They correctly guessed they were some sort of aircraft detection system, but they fundamentally misunderstood their importance. They saw them as mere early warning devices, not the heart of a sophisticated command and control network. They did try to bomb them, but the open lattice steel structure of the towers made them incredibly difficult to destroy with conventional bombs. Most passed straight through, and the stations were often back online within hours. The Germans concluded that attacking the towers was a waste of resources and instead focused on what they believed were the real targets: the RAF's airfields and command centers. This was a catastrophic miscalculation. By ignoring the radar chain, they allowed the doubting system to continue its work, giving the RAF the decisive advantage throughout the Battle of Britain. As the summer of 1940 wore on, the system was refined. A supplementary system called Chain Home Low, or CHL, was introduced. It used a different frequency and a rotating antenna to specifically detect low-flying aircraft, plugging a critical gap in the original high-altitude system. Now, even German raiders, trying to sneak in on the deck, just above the waves, would appear as blips on a screen. There was nowhere left to hide. Day after day, the Luftwaffe launched massive raids, and day after day, the RF met them. The cost was heavy on both sides, but the German losses were unsustainable. They were losing experienced pilots and expensive bombers at an alarming rate. They simply couldn't achieve the air superiority they so desperately needed. The invincible Luftwaffe was being bled dry by an outnumbered foe that seemed to anticipate its every move. The climax came in September. The invasion barges were ready. The German army was waiting for the green light, but the skies over England were still contested. On September 15th, a day that would become known as Battle of Britain Day, the Luftwaffe threw everything they had left into two massive daylight raids. Again, the doubting system saw them coming from miles away. Every available fighter was scrambled and directed to the intercept points. The skies erupted into a swirling chaos of dogfights. The German bomber formations were broken up, harried, and forced to turn back. Having suffered devastating losses, the message was clear. The RF was not broken. It still controlled the skies over its homeland. 2 days later, on September 17, 1940, a secret message was sent from Hitler's headquarters. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain, was postponed indefinitely. It would never be rescheduled. The threat of invasion had passed. The network of steel towers, the quiet professionalism of the WAAF operators, the cool-headed filterers and controllers, and the brilliance of the doubting system had held the line. It was a victory, won not just by brave pilots in the sky, but by a technological and organizational masterpiece on the ground. Chain Home was Britain's invisible shield, a war-winning weapon that turned the tide when the nation's survival hung by a thread. It proved that information, properly gathered, filtered, and distributed, could be more powerful than brute force. An incredible legacy that shaped not only the outcome of the war, but the future of technology for generations to come. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories about the incredible tech and tactics that shaped our world. Let us know in the comments what other historical turning points you'd like to see covered. See you in the next one.